let's move on. That was a really great discussion. One other bit of news from the AI world in terms of technical, or this is an ecosystem development really, is that OpenAI have announced support for MCP, which is the Model Context Protocol, which is kind of an open protocol to allow AI agents to talk to one another and to talk to other, basically nearly like an API interface for LLMs, right? And it came out of Anthropic. OpenAI have now announced support for it. It means this is now a de facto standard, which I think is really interesting and another exciting accelerator for the AI ecosystem. But yeah, keen to hear your guys' thoughts on that.
Open standards. Never heard of those things. This has been the dream, right? Is the idea that there's some kind of standardized protocol for discovering, connecting, and accessing third-party data sources and services. This has been the dream since, year zero of the internet, year zero of computing, maybe. Hooman, you and I were engaged in this conversation, this battle, this dream for many years. Some of the people in the audience know I helped coin and popularize the phrase data portability and some of the open standards, and we've been trying to drive at something like this for a long, long time. And so now this idea that these major companies all need their LLMs to access basically RAG, their retrieval augmented generation for your personal data, and they don't want to battle on the layer of abstraction called data access. And they've just standardized in an open model. That's fantastic. And so MCP is called what you got Model Context Protocol, which is a fancy way of saying a standard way for the model to access your data. And for you as a third-party data provider or functionality provider to expose that data to the models. This is amazing. It's awesome. It's great. And it brings us closer to a world where you have less lock-in and more liquidity and freedom in your personal utility. So I'm very excited about it. Have you dug into this, Hooman? Have you looked into the underlying protocol and the way it works?
Yeah, I think the implementation is where I'm curious about. So there's the new company that I think I want to say Google or capital G backed called Dev Agents. Hugo's new company that it's a bunch of really great people. They raised like $40 million. I'm curious to see how this fits into like a multi-agent context. To me, the real power in the agentic world is collaboration, right? And how do these agents hand off data? And we actually, a lot of those protocols that you were referring to before, like OAuth, for example, are going to be the building blocks of this, right? And so you're going to have OpenAI and you're going to OAuth into these other resources, right? And currently you're OAuthing and saying maybe, okay, for example, to have data portability, but then you might OAuth and then you layer this on and say, okay, well, we are going to have permission to talk, like literally back and forth. So I think I'm curious to see how, again, the implementation, I think it's a great first step to have a standard, and I don't want to be pessimistic, but I think the real thing is like, okay, how are you actually going to implement these things? Because there's non-determinism in these agents and how they pass data back and forth and when they start and stop. And, there's a lot of security attacks that are going to occur when you look at these types of things that are happening, right? Like overloading context windows, or I don't know, like there's going to be weird stuff that happens and I'm not quite sure. So I've only looked at it cursorily, but I think the implementation is when I'm going to get really excited. And I'd like to see some examples of some of these, like when it starts getting fancy, but it's exciting for sure.
I mean, I think one of the things, like with a lot of stuff in AI, is I'm seeing very rapid adoption, right? So it's like, yes, I think those are valid questions, Human, but the thing that's happening is everyone. Like, I'm just seeing a lot of usage of this thing, and so pretty quickly, whether it's good or not, it's sort of like JavaScript, right? Like adoption is the game with new technical standards, and I feel like it's running away with it pretty fast, and in this accelerated AI timeline, I reckon within a couple of months, we'll know whether this is, the protocol we'll be using for the next decades. But it's looking likely from my point of view. And this piece of news about OpenAI is them conceding that point too, I would say.
I think you're right. It has a really good shot. And I think checking in on a couple months, you'll see again, if it gets implemented by the right few players, game on. It was like OAuth. I mean, once that thing was out, it was over.
I'm finding myself becoming a little bit of a maximalist or a purist when it comes to these LLMs, that at a certain point of maturity, the LLM will generate a lot of software for you on the fly. And you won't think of it as software development the same way you don't think of a Google Doc as publishing, desktop publishing, right? It's just a doc. You spin it up in a fraction of a second. You write some shit down. I think the LLMs are going to generate a lot of software for you on the fly, and that software is going to get more and more sophisticated. And I don't know why you need some of the B2B SaaS, some of the software, even consumer software we've had traditionally built by hand and lovingly handcrafted. Similarly here, I don't know why a lot of protocols are necessary in a true agentic world where the AI knows your intent, your needs, your sensitivities, your concerns, and your personal AI can't just, connect with your airline AI and say, hey, my guy wants to go on a plane. He likes the aisle seat. He likes to be up front. He likes to be over the wing. He doesn't like to give his credit card out, but given that this is a high intent, high trust brand, I'm going to give you his credit card, and I'm going to tell you his food preferences because I think that's probably the right judgment call here. And oh no, I'm not going to give you his bank details and whatever. I think that there's a world at which the protocol is English, the privacy model is reasoning, and the actors involved are a private agent interacting with an enterprise agent or what have you. And it sort of all just happens magically. This might be reductive. It might be overly simplifying the equation, but I think there's a world where a lot of it just plays out like that. I'm reminded of Sam Altman early in the journey, where he said, this whole AI safety thing, at some point, when it comes to something like racism, we might just have to end up saying to the model, hey, don't be racist. Like, the alignment problem is just asking it to do something, and then it figures out what does that mean, and it knows kind of the subtleties and nuances of what racism looks like, and goes, okay, I'm just not going to do that. That's the instruction I've been given.
Yeah, but I mean, that's a great example of the problem, right? If I told 10 random people over the world, don't be racist, I think the interpretation of that is quite different. And I think that is where, I don't know the protocol solves that. I agree with you that once you get to a certain level of intelligence, the reason you need a lot of protocols is because these things are, on average, when you have software and web services that are interacting, they don't have autonomy, right? That is part of the level, and we have to have some trust.
Yeah, but what I'm saying, all those APIs, which we both have been deep in REST API.
Yes, I'm agreeing with you. I think you start to move away from that system. My only point is like, that racist kind of example is actually a good one. Is like, I don't think we have standards. The challenge in alignment is I don't believe society is aligned, and I think that is where you're gonna, like, you can have whatever APIs and protocols that you want. We still fundamentally as a society aren't aligned. Like, I can argue to you that people would say, like, look at the in liberal and conservative. Like, we don't have alignment, and that is the problem. How could you build an aligned system when we are not aligned?
This is the thing, an argument I've been making for a long time, and I love this argument, which is this thing that Facebook and social media broke the world, and I've been arguing that it's certainly applied a lot of pressure, but what it's also done is reveal a broken world. It's revealed the tribalism and the myopicness and the parochialness of human nature. It's our tools are reflecting us, and we don't like what we see. And so I love what you're saying, Hooman, which is this question of alignment is a question of, well, aligning to what? And if we can't get aligned with each other, how can we expect the AI to align not only to each of us, but to our civilization and society en masse? Boy, oh boy, that is a question for the ages.
Oh boy.